It's a great opportunity to be speaking about photography. We will talk about everything related to photography, what to buy, what to shoot, and how to build a great photo with photographer Latifa. Latifa, could you please introduce yourself and explain how you got into photography?
Hey, so yeah, my name's Latifa. I go by LJ Visuals. That's my business name. Honestly, got into photography with my younger brother as a way to connect with him, and then I kind of quit. And then after that, I picked it up again because I was like, I'm interested. I'm not really doing too much else. And then it went from like I'm kind of a hobbyist to like, oh, I'm very passionate about this to like I can make a little extra money from this. So yeah.
So what did you need to learn through the journey?
What did I need to learn? Okay, so the first three things that you should learn whenever you pick up a camera are ISO, aperture, and f-stop. It's all about lighting, how you allow lighting to come in and what you want your photo to look like. There's a lot of like work done in your camera before you actually take your image and put it into Lightroom, Photoshop, Lumiere, or any other editing software that you may have.
In your experience, what is the difference between a beginner photographer and an experienced photographer?
Well, so even though I've been doing this for about 3 years, I still consider myself a beginner. A beginner, I think we're all beginners. They're just, okay, super beginner. Like day one, you just don't know what to photograph. You're like, oh, I want a camera, so I'm going to get a camera. And you're just like, I'm going to keep it in auto mode and click, right? You become a tad bit intermediate when you're able to take that camera and put it in manual mode and set your adjustments. Those three that I mentioned, ISO, your f-stop, and your shutter speed, when you're able to set those on your own, because then that's when you start making your photos personal to you. And then I think once you're like extremely experienced is when you can take a photo, any photo, whether you shot it or not, put it into your software, your editing software, and pretty much reconstruct it exactly how you want it.
My question is, how do you decide to take a certain photo? How do you put the elements inside the photo together?
Okay, so for me, I utilize a board. So let's just say I have a vision, right? Say I want pineapples, I want orange, and I want to incorporate a brown model and a pale model, right? So I'll start off by, like, I'll go on IG and I'll find 2 models that are interested. Maybe they've never worked together before, maybe they have. And then from that, once I get the okay from them, I'll create a board. Like, okay, I want these type of pineapples, I want this color scheme, and I'll create a really big board online, and I'll send it to them. And then from there, they're able to see my vision and what I want, which means they're able to dress up to par with what I want to take the photo as. And then when they come in, it's just time to shoot. Now, sometimes people don't get so lucky because a lot of beginners, they start working with their friends, and most of our friends aren't models, aren't experienced, and most of our friends know that one model pose that nobody uses.
So my question is, how is your vision as a photographer different from the ordinary people's vision?
um I think it's all about your eye, what you see, what you capture, and like how you capture it. I tell a lot of people who are not in the photography world all the time, you can have 15 photographers take a photo of the exact same image, and you will get 15 different photos because everyone sees everything completely different. And a lot of the time, like when taking photos, not only have I noticed it with myself, but even in conversation with other people, mistakes always happen to be the best photos. Like you'll tell your model, hey, turn your head this way. And while they're turning their head, they'll do something like this. And you're like, wait, stop, hold that pose, don't move. This is a great photo. So a lot of times things are very, very purposeful, but mistakes sometimes, or just like moving or tilting your head, like that's when you'll get photo. And this is only when it comes to portraits. This doesn't apply to landscape or animal photography. This is strictly like portraits.
What about your tools, your equipment?
So as far as like the camera and the type of lenses that I use,
Yeah.
so I use so the Sony A7R III and the Sony A7 III. And I have a 90mm macro lens, 1.4. Some people might know that me, some people don't. 1.4 is the f-stop. That's you ever look at a photo and you see like a lot of, well, I'll say bokeh, but it's really kind of like a creamy background. Like you can't, you know, it's something in the background, but you can't quite tell what it is. So that's bokeh. So the smaller your f-stop, right, the creamier you can get the background and you can get your subject. All right. So work with a micro lens. I have a 24-70, which is kind of like if you want to have if you only want to have one lens, that's the best lens to get, 24-70, because it's very versatile. For most beginners get 50 mils, which is very versatile as well. It's just a prime lens. There's a difference between prime and zoom lenses. I can tell you about that if you want.
Yeah.
You want to know the difference
Yeah.
between,
Yeah.
okay. So a prime lens is only one focal length. So if you hear somebody say, oh, I have a 50 mil, like for instance, 50 mil is pretty much what you see with your eyes, right? So the distance that I can see with my eyes, however close up I can get to you, like physically, that's as close as that lens can get to you. Now, let's say I have a 24mm, right? So a 50 mil, let's say 50 mil can get right here, right? 24 mil can get this close without any distortion or without blurring out the image. So the smaller the lens gets, the closer you can get. Unless you have a macro lens. A macro lens, you can have a 90 or 100 mil, and you can get extreme. Like, you ever see a photo and it's just like someone's eye, and you can see the iris, and you can see all the details inside the eye? No, they 100% use a macro lens to get that shot, because you can't get that shot without any other type of lens. So lenses also, your photography individually definitely will depict what type of lens that you want.
What would you recommend the same kind of equipment to other photographers, especially being newbies?
No.
Why not?
It's too expensive. So if you're a beginner hobbyist and you don't know if you're going to want to stay in the field, I would not suggest going out. My equipment is extremely expensive. I would advise going out and get it in. I would say start with now I'm a Sony shooter, but Nikon, Canon, Fujifilm, Pentax, do your homework. Don't think that if you spend a lot of money, you're gonna have the best photos, because at the end of the day, I can pick up a camera from 10 years ago and still get a really good photo, because I know what I want to photograph, how I want to photograph, and my settings. And the biggest difference between my gear and someone else's gear and a beginner's gear is I know what I'm doing and they don't. So there's no need for you to spend so much money, especially if you're starting out, because you don't know. Now, if you're a year in and you're like, hey, I'm really good at this, okay, buy a step up lens, right? And then eventually, what happens honestly is people start making money. They take that money, they'll sell their old gear and buy new gear. But I would say absolutely not. Do not start off with what I have, because it is, unless you like to spend money, don't do it.
Let's look at your art in practice. Can you show us some examples and how you put the pictures together?
Okay, 1 second. So this photo right here,
Yeah.
was actually taken in my living room. I don't have a studio. This was taken in my living room. I think I had a black backdrop. I had a red light to the left of her. I had a blue light to the right of her. And I was like, I just want to play with some color gels to see what happens. I had literally just got these gels, and I was like, I want to play with them. So I was like, hey, I called a friend. I was like, do you want to come over and play and help me? And she was like, she agreed. So I was able to get some shots of her. I was like, here, put these leaves on you. I just bought some randomly. I was like, put these leaves on you. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to make something magical. And I was just like, oh, okay. And this was an incident where she turned her head, and I was like, don't move. all of the passion is in your eyes, right? And you can, if looking at the photo, you can see clearly that there's so much passion in her eyes, which makes the photo look amazing. Yeah. So after I got this photo of her, I took it out, put it in Lightroom, did some color correcting. Then I transferred it from Lightroom to Photoshop, did some skin correction and more color correction. And then I have the image that you have in front of me.
Yeah, fantastic.
Did you want to see more?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will show you this one.
Let's explore deeper what you do.
So with this photo, she is actually a model. She's brand new to the area that I just moved to, and I ended up reaching out to her. Now, this is a park here where I live. This is just a random park, and what we were doing, we had already finished our shoot, but I was like, hey, let's just walk around and you know, see what happens. And we ended up stumbling upon this teepee, and I was like, hey, I know we put everything up, but do you want to go sit over there and shoot really fast? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, whatever you do, just do it, and I'm gonna shoot. So this right here, this is just her naturally being herself. She came prepared to shoot. She's an experienced model, so this was very, very easy to capture. The wind was blowing, her hair was right, her eyes were closed, like everything about what she was doing was really, really nice for this photo. So to show you more, let's go. So, oh no, it went away. Here we go. To show you more. Now, if you were looking at this and you were a photographer, you would 100% already know that I edited this, because right, this is not something that we see every day. So, but he and I, we were just, this is part of my In the Green series. I had, that series was pretty much showcasing men and women in nature. And so we were just, we had this one specific location. We started shooting. He was like, hey, I really want to do something with my hands. And so we just looked around, we spun around in circles, like, hey, pick that flower up. And then so he picked it up, and in this, you can't tell that he's talking, but he's just like, he's talking to me, closes his eyes, and he's like, do you have the shot? Did you get the shot? I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice. This photo, maybe 4 or 5 different versions of this same photo with different color editing on it. But this was, he really enjoyed that photo. But I have another right here. Screen share. So in this photo, if you may or may not be able to tell, but I'm angled. I'm not straight on taking this photograph. I felt what he had on was very simple, very clean cut, very basic. I wanted to highlight his eyes, and like, it looks like, hey, I'm reaching for something. Like for me, all the details are in the eyes, and that's what I really wanted to highlight in this photo. His eyes, the story that his eyes are telling. So like, some things are different. Some people, they say, hey, the focus is hand. But when I look at this photo, I see his hand, but that's not where my focus draws to his eyes. For this photo, which another one that I really, really, really loved, it's only because her intensity with her eyes is why I love this photo so much, because her eyes just tell a story that it's so many different versions. And the way the green plays on the red and the purple and the orange and the different hues, like within her skin, but without taking too much away from her actual skin tone, right? I truly love this photo. Now, the difference between this photo and a photo that I showed you earlier of a similar person is I moved maybe over about an inch. That's the only difference. But an inch makes that much of a difference.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then I'll show one last photo. And I'll show of this same person. Here we go. So with this one, right, you can tell, like, if you looked at the last photo, now red and blue, right? These were the two colors I was working with. Now in this one, it clearly looks like a little pinkish purplish and a little like purple blue over here, but I was able to change the colors the way I wanted to. Still didn't take anything away from her face. It was just like, hey, these are the gels. And when I say gels, gels are just like so I utilize different lighting. And for this strobe lighting, I have like two 8200s, which were sitting opposite of each other. And I wrapped the gels around the lights. And so when the lights flashed, when my trigger flashed the lights, this is what kind of came up over her. And this is how I was able to get this image. Now, in this one, she doesn't have the plant or leaf in her hair, but other than that, nothing changed. Like, and one thing that people don't realize is that you can, when you take a photo, you don't have to have the most, like I said, that was done in my living room. You don't have to have a studio. You don't have to have this big old huge space. You just have to know what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot it.
So the question here is, how can you turn these photos into business to make you some money?
Okay, so for me, actually, so I'll take 3 photos at a time. I'll put them on my IG. People in my area will, hey, I want to do a shoot with you. And that's how I began to make money. But what I'm trying to do is I want to get into magazines and officially, like, eventually, like, get to the big city, whatever city that is, make the really big bucks. But that comes with a lot of submissions to a lot of different magazines. It comes with a lot of no's. But the thing is perseverance. Like, I can't quit because somebody's gonna say yes. Just I have to go through a million no's first. It doesn't. In the beginning, it did deter me. I was like, my work's not good enough, you know, this, that, and the other. And then I came to the point like, hey, no one has an eye how I have an eye. No one has an eye how you have an eye. And there are people who actually appreciate work the way that I do it, and there are people who don't appreciate it. But it's just like, to be in this field, you have to be very strong within yourself, and you cannot let someone's criticism of you break you, because you will not go forward. You will just kind of get stuck in limbo. So
What challenges have you faced so far?
people not liking so doing a shoot, loving it, like doing a shoot, absolutely loving it, like for a family or for an event, and like, oh, these photos are great, sending them off to the client, and they're like, I hate them. And I'm like, wait, what? You hate them? So it's just like, at that point, there's nothing you can do, because what I love, somebody's not going to love. And just because someone loves my work of other individuals or other events doesn't mean that they're going to love my work of them and their events. So I mean, it's a tough one to combat, but you are going to have people who love your work, and then the second you work with them, they're going to say, I don't like this, and I want to do it, and I want you to do it over. But it's just like, hey, that can't, one, the event's not going to it's not going on again. 2, a lot of people don't understand, like, it takes a lot of time and effort to pull 500 photos, pick the top 100, and then you have to go in and pick the top 50. And out of the top 50, you have to pick the best 20 and then edit 20 individual photos. That takes time. And people like, oh, you have a camera, take the picture and send them to me tomorrow. That's not gonna, realistically, that's not gonna happen. Now, you have some people who are like, yeah, I'll take 500 photos and send them to you tomorrow. And I'm gonna, like, I tell everyone, I'm like, hey, don't expect quality work, because that's just, it's unrealistic.
Oh yeah. And when was your best moment in this business?
No, I think my best moment is every day. I think every time I learn something new is my best moment. So I try to take, I utilize LinkedIn Learning. I utilize YouTube. I actually have mentors. There are so many groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, that where people they'll, hey, there's all female groups. There's so many different groups where I'm able to ask somebody something, and they're able to help me. Like, I don't understand, like for the longest I didn't understand frequency separation, and I literally didn't understand because I was missing one step. And that's that is so, it's so deep. Like, frequency separation is where you go and pretty much color match and smooth skin, and without making somebody look cartoonish, right? And for the longest, I was struggling, and I was like, YouTube this, YouTube that, mentor this. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to pay somebody to teach me how to do this, because all free information isn't the best information. And if it's something that you're passionate about, something that you really want to delve into and be great in, you're gonna eventually pay for services when you don't understand. And like I said, I'm a freelance photographer, so I'm self-taught. Everything I know, I taught myself, or I reached out to someone to teach me. I didn't go to school for this. But you don't have to necessarily go to school to be a photographer. There are plenty of people who went to university, spent $100,000, and like are at home in their parents' basement and they can't do anything with photography. So please don't let people lie to you and say you have to get this degree, because nowadays the degree doesn't. If you have the degree and absolutely nothing to go along with the degree, you kind of just like wasted your time.
So my other question is, what is your advice or recommendation for new photographers to get a good contract?
To get a good contract?
Yeah.
I say consistency, like for me, right? So I have not had like for a major company, I haven't had that yet. Not saying that it won't happen, I just haven't had it yet. But every single time that you shoot, there should be a contract. Every single time that you have an individual that wants to work with you, there should be a contract, because 9 times out of 10, these photos are going to go on social media. 9 times out of 10, let's say I do your photos, right? And you love your photos and you posted photos, and now somebody they're like, oh, he's a really great model, we want to work with him, right? So at that point, let's say you did that. The copyrighted work is still my work. It's my information. I did that, right? So at that point, it's kind of like, hey, not necessarily that you have to ask me permission as a person, but as a photographer, because maybe I don't want my work to go out that way. Now, this is where people get in trouble, because models will send off photographers' work, give them no credit, and then let's say they make bank. And then now the models are being sued because, hey, one, the copyright, like in the contract that you signed, you said that you would not do X, Y, and Z. You did X, Y, and Z. You gave me no credit. So I'm sorry. Now I have to, legal matters. But every single time you shoot, every single time, there needs to be a contract outlining specific rules of how, what, when, where, and why, every single time.
Are there other dangers of working in this field?
For models and photographers, yes. So what you might not know is female photographers are very few. And then African American female photographers, that category is even smaller. And then you have models. So from a model standpoint, and I don't mean to put men on bash them, but there are men who are like, hey, I want to work with you. You can't bring anyone around. You have to come alone, and I want you to wear X, Y, and Z. Now, a lot of young models who don't know any better, they'll follow those rules and end up being harassed or sexually assaulted. And you can literally read about this on the internet wherever you go. And so for me, what I tell all people is, if you're shooting with me, bring whomever you want. Don't bring your whole family, but 1 or 2 people, that's fine. You can bring 1 or 2 people, because I understand that it's a comfort thing on the model end. And for me as a photographer, the scariest thing for me is shooting in a location that I don't know too well, and then shooting period. Because when I go out, I have a little cart, like a little push cart, and it's pretty big, and I have all of my equipment in there. And while I have all of my equipment in there, I have my camera, I have one camera and one lens in my hand. And all of my equipment is either like right beside me or right behind me. And if somebody decides to like snatch my stuff, it's not like I'm gonna drop my camera to run after them, because that's a lot of money. And then it's not like so like my biggest fear is, though I've never run into it, is someone taking, or stealing my stuff. Oh, another one is people improperly backing up your SD card. It happened to me. I had a shoot at New York Fashion Week last February, and it was amazing. And I had gorgeous shots, gorgeous photos. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be famous. And I lost the SD card. It stopped working. And I had a chance maybe 4 or 5 times to back up those photos, and I didn't do it. And every single image was gone. And then like opportunity was out the window because I had nothing to supply the company that wanted the photos. So always back up your photos 2 or 3 times.
Are there other serious issues you want to bring up?
Serious, like what? Like serious as in what?
As you just have said, like dangers, risks, losing your stuff, someone getting your camera and running away.
Outside of that, I mean, you just have to be very cognizant of what you're doing. You cannot be clumsy. Just ensure that if you're close, take extra precaution, use extra wrist straps to like hold your gear onto you. If you don't trust someone, don't allow them to hold your camera. If you know that they can't pay for your stuff, don't allow them to hold it. Make sure you 100%. It's like a lot of people can get insurance with their homeowner's insurance, but you definitely want to 100% get insurance for your actual gear and cover each piece of equipment. That is a must. That is a have to. If you lose it or break it, you will get some type of refund. But if you have no insurance and you break a $3,000 lens, you are out $3,000.
What else would you like to say?
I say like don't when it comes to photography, don't overthink it. Honestly, like just don't overthink it. Like go out and have fun and try to shoot every day. That's the biggest thing I was told. It's like shoot every day, because you'll start to notice different things every single day. So shoot every day. Even if you don't have a person and you want to do portraits, don't just shoot. Like shoot the details on a rock, shoot the details at the ocean, shoot the details of a car, get different angles of things that you see every day that you never realized. Just the biggest thing is shoot every day, and you will get better every single time. And if you don't understand something, like it's going to take a little bit of work. Go on YouTube. Like before you pay a bunch of money, utilize YouTube, utilize people around you who actually have been in the industry, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to take criticism. Those are the biggest hitters.
It's been amazing talking to you, Latifa. I really appreciate your care for others and recommendations for security, for how to land a good job, and really best wishes with your job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.